Thank you for all those kind words. I have to admit that my reputation at this point far exceeds my capabilities. I remember what Golda Meir said, before my friend Max James out there says it. It reminds me of it. But she said, "Don't be humble, you're not that great." That certainly is true here. There's no question that I come from a different direction, from a different place, to be in front of you. Somebody that actually got out of the Air Force and went a different direction, and in some ways has come back. In 1978, I spent my last $350 to fly to Morocco. In fact, they told me that if I got my ticket a month before, it would only be $350. Now, I got to JFK, and when I got there, I was about to write the check, and they said it was $500. Well, I didn't have $500 in my bank account. I wrote the check, and on the way to the flight, I called a friend and said, "Please put $150 in the bank for me in my account, because I'll get to Morocco okay, but the check will bounce by the time I get there, and they won't let me come back home." I went to Morocco with some ideas. I knew one person there who was the vice commander of the Air Force, and he had asked me to come over there and look at some things. I stayed in a hotel room. It was $11 a night, this hotel room. I didn't really have enough money for food and other things, so they had continental breakfast there, so every morning I had my free breakfast, and I took the French bread, the hard rolls, off the table, and I had very smartly brought a jar of peanut butter. And I had marmalade on the table and some butter. So for lunch and dinner, I had peanut butter sandwiches for a week. But anyway, I got there on a weekend, and I called up somebody. I didn't speak any French, but I got a hold of the vice commander, and he came on the phone, and I said, "Colonel Major, I'm here." And he said, "I'm busy. Call me tomorrow." And he hung up the phone. That night I broke out in hives. I don't know if any of you have had hives, but it's a nervous condition that's very uncomfortable. But anyway, I did see him that week, eventually, and he presented 3 problems to me. They had a war going on in the Western Sahara. And they had a problem with the SA-6 missile. It had shot down already almost 10% of the Air Force. They'd lost Mirage F-1s, they'd lost F-5s, they'd lost C-130s, and a command post to it. They also had a problem. They couldn't fly their C-130s all the way to the U.S. They had to stop, a couple stops. They asked me if I could set up range extension for them, put range extension tanks on them. And then number 3, they needed to tactical refuel vehicles, aircraft in the south, in the war area. Well, I was able to go back home and get to work like a beaver, and went to work on this. But the first project I did was to get the range extension tanks. Now, you got to understand this. I had no money. I started a company on nothing. And the tanks were $20,000 a piece. You had to put 2 of them on an aircraft. And I'll never forget, I knew nothing about business. And I asked, by the way, I asked the first class today, does anybody in this audience know what EBITDA means? One guy raised their hand. All right. So anyway, it just so happened the company that made the tanks had a fellow that was the head of their marketing and sales. And wouldn't you know it, his son-in-law was a 1964 U.S. Air Force Academy graduate. And he said, "You know, I trust you, I believe in you, I'm going to sell these to you, I'm going to get, without any credit whatsoever, because there's no place they could go to find me having any credit of any kind." And he did sell those tanks to me, and I was able to put the rest of it together. I'll never forget, my bid was $72,000 in aircraft. Lockheed bid against me, their bid was $188,000. But each aircraft I did, I made $17,000. Now, $17,000 was the world to me, because I knew I could live for a year on $17,000. And that's kind of how I got started. Now, to stop talking about me for a while, and I'll come back to a couple of things. I was talking about in the film here success, and what does success really mean? And I've searched for many years, what does success mean to all of us? What does it mean to an Air Force Academy grad? How can we sit and look at ourselves, or some other people look at us in different ways, and ask if we're successful? There's an interesting statistic that we did a study here years ago on, and I don't know how many of you know about it. I've mentioned it to people in other speeches. But in the late 1980s, we did a study on graduating classes, and we decided that if you had served 20 years in the military and reached at least the rank of lieutenant colonel, you would be considered a military success. I don't know what you people in the audience would guess, but that number is 31%, our military success. So the question that I ask myself is, what the hell happens to the other 69% of us in this group? I wrote a very controversial article a couple of years in Checkpoints, and it was called USAFA Insignificance. And it was meant to be controversial. It was meant to start the discussion about us looking at ourselves, what we are, what we stand for, and where we're going. And in that article, I made the point that when we compared ourselves, as we did a lot tonight, I think with humor, because we have a lot of respect for West Point and Annapolis, and we've copied a lot of things that we do after them. We still learn from those fine institutions. But let me just find my note here. As I wrote this article, I looked at 3 areas where I compared us to graduates of those schools. First of all, the military. Well, we've never had a chairman of the Joint Chiefs. If you look today, in most of the key positions, where maybe a Petraeus has been or other people, there aren't many U.S. Air Force Academy graduates in those positions, and they have not been. I looked at politics. We've only had 1 congressman so far, and that was Heather Wilson. And by the way, I think the role of Heather Wilson, I've got to know her. She's running for the Senate in New Mexico. It's a very tight race, but I would encourage all of you to get involved and support Heather, because it doesn't make any difference what party she is. She's one of us, and she believes in the same things that we do. Yeah. She's a wonderful person.
Amen. Yes.
So politically, when Navy's got McCain's running for president, we've got people in the Senate, Jack Reed in the Senate from West Point, et cetera, et cetera. We're far behind. Then I looked at industry. If you might recall, there was a Forbes magazine article in 2009 where they asked the question in the magazine, what is the best school to go to in the United States to be a Fortune 500 CEO? And surprisingly enough, it wasn't Stanford, it wasn't Wharton, it wasn't Harvard, it was West Point. West Point turned out to be the best school in this country to go to. So that caused me a whole series of further questions. And when we look at the various institutions. And my concern, and Randy comes from a different point than I do, and a lot of people do here, your concern is about this institution, and it should be, making it the finest institution possible. My concern for the last several years has been, what happens to our people after they graduate? Do they actually evolve into positions of leadership for this country? And they make a difference. And that continues to be the trail that I will follow and I will push for. This country, more than ever, we need to turn out graduates, we need to turn out people with character and competence. And the question has been, is why are they not evolving into the top positions for the country? I think we've improved a lot. I think things are getting a lot better. But if you look back 5 years ago where we were coming off sexual assault scandals, we were coming off religious proselytizing. We had an AOG that was dysfunctional. Many of you don't know it, but we had an AOG that was absolutely dysfunctional.
True.
And I have to give credit to a Fred Gregory, a Bill Boyster, an Eb Eberhardt, others that resigned from the board, that stood up for what we should be. And it took quite a while in a process we went through, a process of elections. And we were able to turn around that AOG. We were able to get into some tremendous leadership. I can't thank Terry Storm enough. I can't thank T. Thompson enough. And Gary Howe, because Gary Howe was the glue for a while for us. But we were in bad shape 5 years ago. And it is fabulous what's happened since then and what track we're on. we had a non-existent endowment. We went through a period of 1999 to 2005 where West Point raised $253 million. Annapolis raised about $150 million. We could not raise $30 million for this institution. That has changed. It's getting better. Steve can give you the numbers, Steve Lorenz, who's doing a great job at the endowment. And I would have to say, this group that I'm involved with in the endowment, they get criticized for being a bunch of rich, haughty people. You've never seen more dedicated graduates in your life than these people. Wonderful people, giving back, help building indoor training facilities, help building like my friend Max James, Centers for Character and Leadership. Paul Madeira, who a lot of you've never heard of, one of the early investors in Facebook, let's just put it that way. But this is a wonderful group of people. The endowment's here. It's vital, it's functioning. And we have two of the founders here tonight. Where's Bill Wecker and Terry Drabant? I have to give those two tremendous credit. They convinced me to get involved in others. Where are you two? Would you stand up, please? Falcon Foundation. The Falcon Foundation under Speedy Martin and Jay Kelly is going in new directions. This is the most distinguished group we have of our graduates here. There's 150 very distinguished people in it. A lot of the people are here tonight. We've handed out scholarships that have just been given to us by the registrar, the next 100 in line that didn't make it. But now the Falcon Foundation is looking for other things to do for the Academy, and I have full confidence in Jay and Speedy and the people involved, Eddie Shirley on the strategic committee, that this will improve for us. The athletic department. There was a cloud over our heads when Fisher DeBerry left. Hans knew my classmate was in tremendous trouble for letting Fisher go. I don't know if he's here tonight, but is there a better football coach in this country than Troy Calhoun?
No!
I don't think so. Troy, are you here tonight? If you're not, no problem. But I think most of you know he turned down about a $3 million offer from Tennessee to leave this place. He was making $750,000 a year when he turned that down. He turned down at least that much to go to the Denver Broncos recently. And let me tell you, this guy gets it. He is dedicated to this institution and what we stand for. He realizes there's more than football involved. Academic department. Dana Bourne is a breath of fresh air. A lot of us were afraid she was going to leave this summer. She's not leaving. She's staying here. And let me tell you, this woman gets it. She understands where this country is, what goes on in the country. We have, I'll focus on one simple thing. We have a new Center for Innovation. Our cadets are working on the 6th generation fighter. Our cadets are working hand in hand with Intel, which is providing funding and money in their latest technology to us. They wouldn't provide it to a civilian school, but they're going to provide it to us now in cyber warfare, in the cyber field. We're heavily involved. Jim McCarthy's helped in this a lot. UAVs, RPAs. We've got like 300 students on that program. But you know, the Air Force is changing completely. And the future of the Air Force is changing. And our officer corps is changing. The number of our aircraft are changing. The number of fighter pilots we have are changing. All of this is changing. This institution needs to be the incubator for big Air Force. That's what we are. The key to the Air Force since 1947 has been innovation in technology, whether it's jet aircraft, overprop aircraft, it's going into space, it's RPAs, UAVs, whatever it is. The key to us and the key to our strength, besides the fine people that we have and the fine training, is innovation in technology. And I believe very strongly in that. As a civilian, we'll do everything that I can. Now back to the 31 versus the 69%. Don't get me wrong, this is no disrespect to Air Force generals, military people that make a career. In fact, all of you people that are graduates here that do get out and do something else in the civilian world, you're totally unique, as I told the cadets today. I said, you are totally unique because you have the military experience. You've been through military school, and now you get out and you're able to go, hopefully, to a distinguished civilian college and learn the other side of life and start to apply that. You have a great advantage over other people. But I gave a speech about 2 years ago to the Air Force Academy Society of Washington. And in it I talked about what's happened to the other 69%. If we're only turning out 69% as a success rate here, spending whatever it is a year per student, take a number, 300,000, 400,000 per student. Defense News says 416,000, that's not right. But whatever that number is, it appears very expensive. In the United States, this country ought to get its bang for the buck, but if 69% are not a military success, you would question that. Well, at the end of that speech, a 1995 graduate stood up and he said, you know, I went to Wharton School, I got a PhD in this, and I'm doing these things, that things, and nobody's ever addressed me, thought about me. I've been forgotten. Another grad stood up, a 1968 grad, and I don't remember his name, and he said, you know, I have a 500-man corporation that I run, I'm the CEO. I create all these jobs for all these families. And he said, nobody's ever thanked me or talked about me